That's it now. Okay. Thank you, and welcome everyone to this meeting of the East Lothian Integrated Joint Board Audit and Risk Committee on 18th of March 2025, and it's being held remotely. Can I ask Ms. Curry to read the data protection statement, please?
I will do. This meeting is being recorded and will be made available as a webcast via the Council's website in order to allow the public access to the democratic process in East Lothian. East Lothian Council and NHS Lothian are data controllers under the Data Protection Act 2018, and data collected as part of the recording will be retained in accordance with the Council and NHS Lothian's policies on record retention, and the webcast of this meeting will be publicly available for up to 6 months. I'll now take the roll call of members present, noting that we have apologies from Dr. Trish Cantley. David Binney.
Present.
Jeremy Finlay.
Present.
Elizabeth Gordon.
Present.
And Lynn Jardine.
Present.
And can I ask if any members have any declarations of interest? Nope. Thank you. That's us ready to start the business, Chair.
Thank you very much. Can I introduce, first of all, agenda item 1, which is the minutes of the committee meeting of the 3rd of December. They're for approval, first of all. We can type that they're an accurate record.
Happy.
Thank you very much. And if we can go through for any matters arising, I'll jump to page 2. Page 3. Page 4. 5. And 6. Okay, no matters arising then. Can we move on to the next item?
Item 2 is the East Lothian Integration Joint Board Annual Audit Plan for 2024-25, and John Boyd is here from Audit Scotland to present this.
Thank you very much. Over to you, Mr. Boyd.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, members. Firstly, just apologies. I am loaded with a cold, so apologies if my voice breaks up during the presentation. In front of you is our annual audit plan for the year ended 31st of March 2025. The plan is in similar format to those that have been presented in previous years. It essentially outlines the roles and responsibilities, both in terms of the IJB and myself as the appointed auditor in relation to the audit for this year and the annual accounts. This is the 3rd year of my audit appointment, which spans 5 years. The plan is split into 2 key sections, the first being the financial statements audit, and the second, my responsibilities under the Code of Audit Practice in relation to some of the wider aspects of public audit. In terms of the financial statements audit, I think the key aspects to draw out to the committee's attention is just in relation to materiality, which is outlined in pages 6 and 7 of the plan. The materiality is essentially when undertaking a financial statements audit, we can't audit to the exact pound, and therefore we have to plan our audit procedures on a risk basis and identify where there's a risk of material misstatement. By material, we consider what would influence the use of the accounts, be that the public or Scottish Government or yourselves as board members. The percentage and benchmark used is essentially expenditure, focusing on essentially how IJB utilises its resources. That's similar to other public bodies. Similarly, the percentage threshold we apply of 2% is consistent with other IJBs and other public bodies with a relatively low risk profile, similar to the IJB, and that's included within our audit plan. The other threshold flag to members is what we call a reporting threshold. So essentially any error or misstatement identified above that threshold, either individually or cumulatively, we would report to members in our annual audit report. As part of our audit plan, our audit planning process, we take a risk-based approach to identify if there are any areas of material misstatement. Given the relatively straightforward nature of the IJB accounts, we haven't identified any significant risks other than the risk of fraud caused by management override of controls. This is a presumed risk under auditing standards, and it would appear in any financial statements audit. In our plan on page 8 of the document outlines the risk itself and our planned response, and our annual audit report will outline our conclusions from the work undertaken at our year end. In terms of our wider scope responsibilities, this covers financial management, financial sustainability, vision, leadership and governance, and use of resources to improve outcomes. Our audit plan identifies an area of specific focus this year around financial sustainability. The IJB, like other IJBs and other public bodies, faces significant financial challenges, both in terms of demand and inflationary-led pressures, including pay and non-pay costs, as well as challenging available resources from the partner bodies, being the council and the health board, with a squeeze in available funding. And we've identified that in the plan. Apologies. The final two areas to identify or to highlight in the plan are our audit timetable, which outlines our proposed dates. I think the key part of the timetable is that we intend to sign off the annual accounts by the 30th of September, being the statutory sign-off date, and we're confident we'll be able to do that working with both partner bodies to gain assurances over the amounts reported in the financial statements. The other area is in Exhibit 5, which outlines our annual audit fee for the year. Really to provide some context of the fee. The fee proposals are set centrally, and there's an opportunity for local audit teams where they identify areas of significant risk to increase the proposed fee by up to 10%. We're not proposing doing that this year and have retained it at the baseline fee. The baseline fee, I think, is a 1.9% increase on the prior year. Audit Scotland have worked hard to try and mitigate where possible the inflationary pressures on audit fees each year, and they've kept it at a 1.9%. You can see that as it's on the line adjustment for average audit price increases, essentially trying to bring that fee back down to 1.9% from the prior year. And finally, for me, just to confirm our audit independence, myself and the team, in accordance with ethical standards, are required to remain independent of the IJB, and our audit plan and in our annual audit report will continue to confirm that independence from the organisation. Really happy to take any questions on the plan itself or the wider audit this year. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, John. Anyone got any questions? Jeremy?
Yes, thanks. Just going back to the materiality and the reporting threshold, perhaps others know the answer to this, but it's set at 227,000. Is that set according to the overall budget of the IJB, or is that standard throughout all IJBs? And secondly, what happens to those misstatements that we don't hear about, i.e. those that are under the 227,000?
Thank you. So the reporting threshold of 227,000 is based specifically on your materiality. So it's actually it's taken as 5% of your materiality. We base that on so the planning materiality, which you'll see there, of 4.54 million, is based on your prior year annual accounts. We revisit materiality on receipt of your draft accounts, and if the numbers have significantly changed, we essentially apply the same thresholds. So 2% to work out your overall materiality, and then 5% would be your reporting threshold. But we wouldn't anticipate that those numbers would change significantly. And normally what we would do is just keep them the same. We wouldn't generally increase them unless it was a significant change. The 227,000 is essentially what we would, it's also referred to as trivial. So we would deem errors below that not to have a significant impact on the accounts. The reason we report those above 227,000 is we consider that a sort of threshold where really for awareness for members when approving the signing of the accounts, to make sure that the members themselves are happy that those errors reported aren't material in your view, and you wouldn't require change. Generally speaking, where we've identified errors in the past, the accounts are updated for the adjustments. But there are times where either because of the relatively low value or because of the admin around updating the accounts, the knock-on impact and some of the disclosures and reporting, the figures are kept in, and it's just reported as an audit difference. Where we do have challenges is where if the errors were going above our materiality threshold, that's where as your auditor I would have challenges around and it could have a potential impact on my audit opinion, because my audit opinion is essentially saying your accounts are free from material misstatement. So where I've got errors above materiality, obviously that then brings into doubt whether or not I could issue that opinion. When they go above performance materiality, generally speaking, that means additional audit procedures to get comfort that those couldn't possibly go above materiality.
Okay, and just as a sort of follow-up to that last point, just to make sure I'm understanding it correctly, one particular item may be deemed to be a trivial. What would happen if you had lots of items that were deemed to be a trivial, and that they then the combination of them all went above the threshold?
Yeah, so when we consider errors, we consider them individually and cumulatively. So if they were to go above the reporting threshold, we would consider the impact on the financial statements. So if they had an impact that would impact essentially a financial statement line item, be it a balance, or if it was your reported income, for example, if that cumulative difference was above 227,000, we would report that as an unadjusted error to the committee.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thanks for that. Elizabeth?
Thanks. Thanks for the report, John. I just wanted to ask you about Exhibit 3 with talking about financial sustainability. And the planned audit response, it states the audit team will review financial plans developed and assess the appropriateness of the financial plans and any assumptions made. I was just wondering, can you give us a flavour of like how much depth that work goes into, what evidence you're looking for, that sort of thing? Thanks.
Yes, thanks. So I'm appointed auditor to 3 other IJBs, including the Scottish Borders and North and South Lanarkshire IJBs. So as part of our audit procedures, we look at some of the assumptions that are made underpinning the financial plan. We also look at the assumptions then feeding into that from the partner bodies, so any local assumptions, be it PA assumptions. While I'm not the appointed auditor of NHS Lothian, I'm the appointed auditor of East Lothian Council, so we look for the financial plan to make sure there's consistencies in terms of some of those assumptions that are being applied and read across, essentially making sure that the IJB isn't an outlier in terms of its financial planning. There's obviously work done centrally by a performance audit team, and we share information and receive information from performance audit colleagues as they gather some of the assumptions made from across all IJBs and audited bodies. So that's where we really gather that information to challenge the plan. So it's a combination of looking at local factors that inform the plan, as well as doing a reasonableness check against other bodies.
Thanks.
Okay. Anyone else got any questions? No. I have a couple. One's very straightforward, just as a sort of a curiosity more than anything else. Do you see that there's any particular challenges in us having a recent change of CFO in terms of carrying out the audit, or does that give you any concerns? No.
No, it doesn't give me any concerns around the audit. We've quite a good process in terms of the preparations of the accounts. That's actually kind of developed over the last sort of 2 years, that process. So I don't foresee any significant impact. There's obviously that piece around the relationship with the partner bodies, and I think that's the most important dynamic for the for the CFO and part of that in terms of the financial planning side, as we touched on in budget monitoring, is that relationship with the council and the health board, and then the reporting of financial performance through to the IJB. So that's something we'll be looking at as part of our financial monitoring. But in terms of delivery of the core audit, no, I don't see it as being a challenge.
Okay, that's good to know. And my other question is maybe a little bit more certainly more within your sort of wider scope. Obviously looking at financial management, sustainability and governance, I just wondered if there's scope for you to be looking into how the IJB were presented with options in terms of that early decision on use of reserves, and what the impact of that might be in terms of our own financial planning, but maybe also in terms of our partner organisations too.
Yeah, so that's obviously something we'll be considering as part of our work this year. Doing a bit of sort of digging around other IJBs. Now, I appreciate every IJB has its own funding arrangement and scheme of and partnership arrangements, but I think it is interesting the move away from having essentially a general reserve, if you like, or an unearmarked general reserve. Does take away some of the autonomy for the IJB and decision making for the IJB. So it's something we'll look at as part of our audit this year, and I know it's something that Audit Scotland as a whole, in terms of the performance audit, looking at the IJB sector, has a keen interest in around how do IJBs build up their financial resilience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay, that's good to know. Thank you so much. Anyone got any final comments they want to make on the report? Are we content to move forward with this then? There's no vote required on this, it's just for noting. Okay, thank you very much. We'll move to the next item, please.
Item 3 is the 2024-25 Risk Register Review, and Mike Porteous will present this report.
Over to you, Mike.
Thanks, Fiona. Thanks, Chair. So this is our sort of final review for this financial year of our risk register, and it just takes us through the various risks. I think we've got 7 risks on our risk register at the moment, and updates the Audit and Risk Committee on the status of those risks and makes any suggestions that I have around changes to those risks, so we can discuss those going forward. The risk register was last reviewed in December, so this follows on from that last review. I'll just take you through the sort of key aspects of the report. The first one is around the risk 5959, which is the appointment of a permanent CFO. So that has now been resolved in the sense that we have a permanent CFO, and I'm proposing that we remove that risk from the register. And we can discuss that at the end if that's okay. If there's any discussion required. Apologies for the next risk which I highlighted, which was the impact of National Care Service proposals. I've put the wrong reference there. It should have been 5279. So apologies for that. I think everybody would have picked it up. So this one was noted this was given a high rating, or has been given a high rating in previous risk registers, because it was paused by the Scottish Government, but the outcomes of the actual progress were unknown at the time. Since then, the Scottish Government have announced that they are no longer going to go ahead with the legislation that would impact on the IJBs. So that has changed in that respect. However, they are setting up an advisory body that will give advice and guidance to ministers on how they can reform the sector itself. So on that basis, I would suggest that we could consider lowering that to a medium risk. Again, we can talk about that at the end. And just for clarification, the East Lothian Council have it on their register as a high risk at the moment, but I think perhaps the circumstances are different in how that impacts on the different bodies. Just moving on, there are 2 other risks that we have on the register that have got a very high status. Those are around the insufficiency of financial and operational resources to deliver our strategic plan. I am proposing that those risks stay as very high, because those are still significant challenges that we face in terms of our financial position and in terms of recruitment and retention and other aspects of operational resources. So I'm proposing that these stay with the risk level that they have. Similarly, there are 2 risks, 5520 and 5279, that have a high risk rating. Those are around demographic pressures and the impact of partners' decisions. We know that East Lothian, or we are forecasting East Lothian's population is going to continue to grow, and we know that our partner organisations will continue to review and reform and revise their services. So I'm proposing that those 2 risks stay with a high categorisation as they are at the moment. And finally, there's 1 risk with a medium setting. That's around accurate financial forecasting, and I'm proposing that stays with a medium risk rating, and that gives me an opportunity to work with my colleagues in finance across both partners to see how we can improve the timing and flow of financial information going forward. So that's my update, but happy to take any questions and discuss any of the risks that we've highlighted.
Okay, thank you very much, Mike. Open it up for questions first of all. Elizabeth?
I don't have any questions about the ones the ones that would be removed or reduced. I'm happy with that. I just actually wanted to ask about the accurate financial forecasting. So, Mike, appreciate that you've not been in post for that long. A while back, things were quite tricky with the information coming from the local authority, and I'm just wondering Are they, do they remain like fully staffed now, and is the information coming at a sort of, you know, when you would expect it at the moment? And the other thing just was in very minor housekeeping thing, but on this version of the risk register, should you change to be the handler of the risk? Because I see that a few of them are still under David King. Thanks.
Well, I'll take that. I'll take your last point first, if you like. I hadn't spotted that, so yes, I should probably be the handler of the risks going forward. I think, with regard to the financial information and the accuracy of forecasting, as far as I know, the council finance staff are up to quorum, or up to, you know, they're fully recruited. I think from my perspective, the difficulty is that both organisations have different reporting timeframes, and it's trying to align those and with the IJB's meeting dates and make sure that we've got the most accurate, up-to-date information, because I think there's nothing more frustrating than getting information that's maybe 2 or 3 months old, and sometimes that's just a factor of timing. So one of the things I want to do is try and make sure that we've got the most accurate information, and we've got the most comprehensive information going forward as well. So I'll be working with both partners, finance colleagues, on how we do that, and just optimising what we can bring to the IJB.
Thanks.
Any other questions? No. Mike, I just wondered, so in terms of 3.5, you mentioned it in your feedback as well in the report, the two very high risk ratings. You've said significant planning will be required to mitigate these risks down. I just wondered if you could summarise what plan we are looking at for how the IJB will engage with trying to establish the strategic priorities. And, you know, do we need to be reviewing those strategic priorities in terms of the extent of those risks, or what do we need to be doing?
Well, I suppose it's an interesting time, because we're trying to update our strategic plan at the same time as trying to build on our financial planning process. So I think we have to be clear what the financial challenges are and how we think we can manage those financial challenges to enable us to deliver the priorities within the strategic plan. But the strategic plan, I suppose, has to reflect the landscape going forward, and the fact that it looks very challenging from a financial perspective. So if we put in our strategic plan something that requires millions and millions of pounds of input into it, then it'll be more challenging to deliver that as a priority or as a deliverable in the strategic plan. So I think it's very much about trying to align both of those, and that's what I guess we've been trying to do in the development days and things, and at the strategic planning group, where we're sharing all the financial information to make sure that everybody understands what the landscape looks like going forward and the challenges that we are going to be facing, and therefore how we can best deliver aspects of our strategic plan for the benefit of the population. I don't know if that help.
Yeah, it does. I suppose it's just trying to understand the extent to which we have to operate with a strategic vision that is within what we can project as the financial resource that we might have, as opposed to what we would ideally want to be doing.
Yeah, I mean, it is a balancing act, I suppose. As I say, it's trying to get the two of them where you can reflect the implications of the financial position going forward, but also have the aspiration and the desire to improve things strategically and deliver a strategic plan that meets the transformational change that we want to do.
I think that's the point. It's about the transformational change that we need to be focusing on over the coming months, isn't it? Yes. We've got David and Fiona. Fiona, do you want to come in on that particularly?
Yeah, I was just really coming in to reinforce it, and I think Mike's highlighted it. We've got a kind of challenge around the finances that in the here and now, and we're trying to manage and mitigate. And we've done a huge amount of work as an IJB in that, and some of the engagement. We are bringing a position to the IJB this week around a balanced budget, but I suppose it's back to the projection question, isn't it? Around we might be okay for the next few months and the next year, but actually this is our time around this transformation planning, prioritization that we need to get into and engage with our IJB. So I think it's that constant wrestle, but no, I think it's breathing space is what we've got just now, but actually I think it is the new strategic plan and also some of the way the position we're in as well just now around what we can see around other investments. What are we going to be setting as that direction? So I think we're all saying the same thing, but I suppose it's we cannot say right, we're okay, because we have to put plans in place and we need to start it now, because with the growth and the projection and where the money we see there's going to be lack of it, we need to plan now to put us in the best position of survival around the IJB and doing the right thing. Importantly, doing the right thing for our people.
Okay, thanks for that, Fiona. David, do you want to come in?
Thank you. Fiona's largely kind of covered off what I was going to say, but what I was going to ask specifically was, is there some way that we can produce something in the risk register that might allow Mike and Fiona to have some tools to specifically challenge the board with through mitigating actions? So if, for example, the risk was failure, bracket yet again, question mark, perhaps not, to produce a balanced budget, what would the mitigating actions be within that? And would that be helpful as a way of driving forward the concerns about what we've got to do and how we need to do it in terms of time and process?
Interesting prospect, David. Anyone want to reflect on that?
I guess not my only reflect, but without having time to I suppose think it through much more, is I would prefer to have a consensus on delivering a balanced budget, and everybody on board, rather than having to pull levers or to enforce certain aspects that get that through. So I'm more in favour of a collaborative and engaged and fully on board, or as fully on board as we can, given that it goes to a vote approach. But I take your point, David. It is an interesting one. I'm not aware of other IJBs that have that, or other organisations that have that sort of approach. But it's something I can certainly look into if you think it's worthwhile.
I suppose it's also about considering it within and you have to forgive me, I'm struggling with a head cold at the moment. The legislative framework that we work within as well, in terms of where those responsibilities lie. So I think there is, it's not just as straightforward, I think, for IJBs as it is for our partner organisations, for instance. Okay. Jeremy, you've a question as well.
Yeah, just something that I just sort of thought about when you were going through the various risks, Mike. You talk about the strategic planning group. Can you just explain more about who's on that, and does that include people from our two partner organisations, i.e. NHS Lothian and East Lothian Council?
It includes some of the IJB members. It includes all the or most of the senior management across the partnership, and I've only been to one meeting so far, so it may be that I haven't picked up on all the people involved, but it's chaired by the deputy chair of the IJB, so there's representation from both partner organisations in terms of the on the ground management, and there's representation from the IJB, and Fiona and myself are attendees at the meeting as well. So it doesn't have people out with the IJB, if that makes sense. It doesn't have, as far as I'm aware, people from the council and health, other than those associated with the IJB and the Health and Social Care Partnership. I think that's right, Fiona. You might be able to correct me if I'm wrong.
Am I okay to come in, Chair?
Yep.
Sorry, was the SPG you were just talking about?
Yes.
Yeah. So it does have representatives from beyond the HSCP. So we've got housing, we've got communities from the council, we've got other partners. But again, and I suppose I'm just reflecting back, we had an SPG development session last week and we didn't have a great attendance. So it does rely on people turning up. So there's quite a lot of work put into this. So even though we have members, the attendance, that's important. So I suppose I'm just flagging that there's quite a lot that still goes into that, but we still need people to turn up at the SPG. So we do have the wider representation. Nothing should really go to the IJB for a decision if it's not gone through the SPG. We've done we did a bit of work last week on roles and just really understanding the SPG roles and kind of that wider impact if we got the right people there, but there wasn't a great attendance. So there is a bit, I guess, for even this group and the IJB to reinforce the importance. If you're an IJB member or representation, you need to be going to these meetings that were set up for that for that SPG.
Yeah, and similarly, I would say all the IJB members get copies of the minutes of the SPG as well, so it's useful. It's sort of incumbent on us to have a read through them when they come in too, so that we're aware of what their discussion's been around. Jeremy, if you're not getting those, then we probably need to just double check that.
Yeah, I wasn't aware of them, but yes, if you could, somebody could just check that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. I think I want to kind of come back to the financial resources risk as well, and I notice that under the controls in place, we have I don't know why I've flagged both of these. I think we've spoken quite a bit around developing a longer term rolling financial plan, and that's certainly what we're talking about in terms of projections and modelling and stuff. But I also note we've got IJB now holds a general reserve. Is there a bit of work that we need to do? I know we've had a reserves policy, but do we need to look at if and how that gets built again?
Yes. The IJB doesn't hold a general reserve anymore. It does hold earmarked reserves, and the ambition would always be to try and build up. I think 2% is the recommended level of reserves, but that can only be done when we are in a position of financial surplus, if you like, and also that we have no investments that we want to make at the time. So I think that will be challenging going forward, but we have a policy, or we have a reserves policy on it. So we probably need to look and see. It's not compulsory. It's only if we are able to do it.
Okay. Okay, I think that's all the questions I had. Anyone got any final comments or anything they want to check in? No. I note that, Mike, when you were speaking, you suggested we might want to come back on the level of risks, but I also note that we've not got this as requiring any vote. Can I just check which layer of governance does have that decision making over those risk levels?
I thought we were able to change the risk levels if we agreed.
Yeah.
That's my
Okay.
understanding.
I mean, are people content that the risk level recommendations that are contained within Mike's report are what we need to be doing? Yeah. Yep. Okay, that's fine.
Okay,
Those
thank you.
noted then. Thank you. And can we move on to item 4, please?
Thank you. Item 4 is the internal audit plan for 2025-26, and that's Duncan Steenbank to present this report.
Thank you, Fiona. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, this is the internal audit plan for 25-26. You'll find on page 31 of your pack. This has been prepared in accordance with global internal audit standards as modified by the public sector application note. You'll find in Appendix A on page 34 of your pack the audits that we're planning on doing in 25-26, which given the conversation today, I think probably certainly the financial planning one hits the right mark in terms of risk. Participation and engagement and shifting the balance of care are the key audits. Happy to take any questions.
Anyone have any questions for Duncan? No. My only question, Duncan, is in terms of, I know you've got the length of time each of these will take, but I just wondered if we could have an indication of when we might expect them to actually come to audit risk.
Can I, Chair, come back with that for the next committee meeting? Yeah. We're doing this from the team within East Lothian Council that we use for 2 of these audits. We'll be putting a plan up next week to the Audit and Governance Committee there. Need to get that approved. Also waiting for fully complete recruitment processes on one auditor for that particular team, and I also need to have a discussion with BDO, who have taken over the contract for the NHS Lothian internal audit function, to confirm when we'll be able to get availability of their resource for the one audit that their team will be completing, albeit that it's likely to be completed by the one remaining NHS member of staff, hopefully. Within the audit team there.
Okay, thanks for that clarification. It's helpful to know. Elizabeth.
Sorry, I had a question, but I missed it in my papers. I was just wanting to ask about the participation and engagement audit, where it states that the internal audit will review the processes of ensuring participation and engagement with the community and specific stakeholder groups. I just wanted to, just in terms of the remit of that, will you be looking purely outside of our IJB board, or would that also include for example, the participation of carers representatives, service user representatives within the IJB board itself? Thanks.
Elizabeth, both within the board, but also with groups like the SPG in terms of the participation there from those groups. But yes, so both will be the answer to that.
That's great, thanks.
Okay. And if there is no other questions, anyone, any comments on the report? No. Okay. So this is for approval for the audit plan for 2025-26 and requires a roll call vote. Obviously, with the, obviously we recognise that the actual timetable will need to come back, but are we, if we can go through, Fiona, to take the roll call, please.
Thank you. Councillor Finlay?
Yes, happy.
Ms Gordon?
Agreed.
And Councillor Jordan?
Agreed.
Thank you. That's the recommendation, approved unanimously.
Okay. And can we move now to item 5, the internal audit report?
Yep. Duncan again for this one.
Thank you, Fiona. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, this is the presentation of the internal audit of recovery plan monitoring. as per the 24-25 approved annual audit plan. Audit committee being asked to note the report, and you'll find it on page starting on page 37 of your pack. It provides reasonable assurance. Key element in was that recovery plan monitoring reporting was being undertaken and was being reported to board members, but through development sessions, but not alongside financial reports to the public board meetings, and that Mr. Porteous has agreed to put in place a framework to ensure that that's being reported back to the board on a regular basis in the 25-26 financial year. Happy to take any questions.
Any questions? No? I suppose I'm just sort of going to ask, it's probably a bit of a daft question. Obviously do audit for a reason, to make sure that we're doing things as we should. I just wondered what might be the risks if we are not, as you say, what risk has been created by not necessarily having that level of engagement in terms of the board itself routinely getting update reports.
I think there are probably two risks. One, sort of going back the way to not having had that reporting, was probably having those discussions in a public forum of how the recovery plans were going, and therefore the additional elements of recovery plan that needed to come forward, so that there was a clear understanding on a public basis of the position and why decisions were being made. In that respect, going forward, it's making sure that those discussions are being clearly held in a public forum, and you can then see some of the considerable pressures from a financial perspective that are being put on these recovery plans, and you can have an idea of how they will then land at the year end. So I think having those in a public forum is important, so that you're including the public within that process.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's fine. Thank you very much. Anyone got any final comments on this report? Are we therefore happy to note the report?
Happy.
Yep. Thank you. We move to the next item, please.
And the next item is item 6, which is the internal audit update of NHS Lothian internal audit reports. And again, it's Mr. Steenbank.
Thank you, Fiona. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, on a regular basis, and for the committee, we review both NHS Lothian audit reports coming up, and also East Lothian Council's audit reports, and bring any that should come to the attention of the Audit and Risk Committee of the IJB up for consideration. This one, which is an audit review of risk management, issued in October 2024 for NHS Lothian, providing audit assurance grading. It's being presented really in relation to recommendations 2 and 3, which are on pages 8 and 9 of the report, pages 54 and 55 of your packs. Really, in that they relate to elements of the DATEX system, which are recommending for upgrades, which then may or impact on the capabilities that we have within the DATEX system for the risks that were being presented by Mr. Porteous to the Audit and Risk Committee here. But happy to take any questions on that report or the presentation to the committee.
Anyone got any questions? Elizabeth?
It's not a question. I just thought I ought to say that I actually am on the I'm now on the NHS Lothian Audit and Risk Committee as well. So I was obviously party to the discussions about that in that committee. So I just thought I better mention that. Thanks.
Thanks,
and I also
Elizabeth.
think there's piece of work ongoing in regard to this audit. So it was just to let you know. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Duncan?
Yeah, should probably relate. These reports are being brought forward because there may be elements that the Audit and Risk Committee may wish to consider in respect of its role, but obviously the recommendations here specifically are operational for NHS Lothian in this case. It's likely that there'll be an East Lothian Council report coming up in a similar vein to the next committee here. So they're operational for the NHS in this particular case to deal with, but it's if there are any impacts on what we consider to be our risk reporting here.
Okay, that's good to clarify. Thank you. I'm not seeing anyone having anything else. I think it's useful for us to have an overview of some of the internal audit that's happening at NHS Lothian level as well. I think that gives us a bit more of an insight into the level of risks that we're looking at across partners as well. But I think we're broadly content with that. Are we happy to note the report?
Yep.
Yes. Okay. So that brings us to the end of our agenda today, and that's probably the quickest I've ever been through one of our agendas. So I'd ask everyone to mute microphones and recording switched off, please. Thank you all very much.
Thanks.
That's great.
Thank
you all.
Sorry, I'm still recording. Just give me a second. I'm new to this. Stop recording.